Good evening. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Today is Thursday, March 7th, 2012. Clerk, if you'd call our roll, please.
Counselor Graney?
Here.
Counselor Camardo?
Here.
Counselor Smith?
Here.
Counselor Rozika?
Here.
Mayor Quill?
Here. Would you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You remain standing for a moment of silent prayer or reflection. Thank you. Please be seated. We will start out with our public to be heard, and I would ask for the clerk at this time to read our rules and regulations.
At this time, we will open the public to be heard portion of the council meeting. As a reminder and pursuant to City Council rules of procedure, prior to addressing council, speakers are asked to state their name, address, and affiliation, if any. All comments should be addressed to the entire council and not to individual staff members. Your remarks must be limited to 3 minutes and concern only issues involving the City Council, city government, or matters of general city concern. Issues involving specific employees of the city should be directed to the city manager outside of the meeting. All speakers before council will observe commonly accepted rules of courtesy. Personal attacks or abusive language will be ruled out of order.
Thank you. Folks, when you come up to take your turn to talk, you may go to either podium, and if you'll just do it in somewhat of an orderly manner, we'll be sure that everyone is heard this evening. So, having said that, is there anyone desiring to be heard? Sir, yes, please, in the back. And we do need your name and address for the record.
Good evening, Council. John Barry, 53 Lansing Street. And may I approach and give you a copy of my words tonight and the article from the internet about parking and cities.
Let's go, John.
Yep.
For your record, please.
Thank you. I live at 53 Lansing Street. My wife and I own 55 Lansing Street, which houses Tangle's Hair Salon and a personal training studio. As you know, we are asking to return parking to the way it used to be, parking on both sides of the street, so my wife's clients will have a place to park. When patients from the medical building and the hospital park all the way up Lansing Street, there are no places for her clients to park because they used to park across the street until alternate parking was instituted. I've been in contact with City Manager Mr. Selby and Traffic Officer Gilfus. They both told me that there's a state law on the books that states a fire truck needs a minimum of 20 feet of open space to get through a street. Lansing Street is 28 feet wide, meaning you can only park on one side of the street, although there has been parking on both sides since 1914 when the building was built. This past week, I went around the neighborhood and measured about 23 streets. These are some of them. Katy Street and Rochester Street, which are 18 feet wide. Holly Street, Dayton Street, Curtis Street, Fulton Street Extension are 21 feet wide. Paul Street, Lewis Street, Catlin Street, Standard Ave are 24 feet wide. These are only streets in my neighborhood. I'm sure there are many other streets in Auburn that are 24 feet or narrower. If this 20-foot state law is enforced in Auburn, there should be no parking on either side of any streets that are 26 feet and under, since a typical car is 7 feet wide. What will Auburn residents do when they find out there will be no parking on either side of these narrow streets, since there are so many? Back in 1998, the city did an experiment, alternate parking on Lansing Street for 1 year. It was detrimental to my wife's business. After a petition of over 200 people and a lot of lobbying on my part, City Council at that time voted to bring parking back on both sides of Lansing Street, and emergency vehicles got through. Tonight I'm asking you for a variance on this 20-foot state law and a variance so we can have parking on both sides of Lansing Street in summer months between Nelson Street and North Fulton Street. It's only 100 yards, so we can make a living and pay our taxes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Berry.
Beth Cuddy, 130 North Street. Albert Einstein defined insanity as doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. I thought of this quote when I read in Friday's Citizen that the City Council was considering rescinding the ban on accepting natural gas drilling wastewater at the city's treatment plant. In the article, a member of council was quoted as saying, "There is really no rational basis in the first place for this moratorium to be put in place. I would contend that there is really no rational basis to remove this ban. Why should anything be different this time? For 15 months, gas drilling companies disposed waste at the plant without following the requirements outlined in the permits. When they finally did, their lab reports showed that the water was too polluted for the plant to handle, and the city stopped accepting the wastewater a month before the ban was enacted. During a 2-year period, the city was only required to test the water once. How is that in any way meaningful data? Much has been made about this distinction between vertical and horizontal produced wastewater. There is no difference. Vicki Murphy has even stated that publicly. The only difference is volume. What you will do tonight is solve Governor Cuomo's and the DEC's biggest problem: what to do with the natural gas drilling wastewater. On Monday, Niagara Falls voted against the DEC's proposed plan to dump it into the Niagara River. What's to prevent the DEC from turning to Auburn to solve its woes? We know our plant can't treat it or clean it. We know it's just being dumped right into the Owasco River. It has been said that these are the wells of our grandfathers. These aren't. They're not just vertical wells, they're horizontal, and it says so in the paperwork submitted 15 months after the fact to the city by the gas drilling companies. This is not revenue that can be relied upon based upon the gas drilling companies' inability to either follow regulations or meet pollutant requirements. The only way this will work is if we turn a blind eye. I cannot believe in a time where other communities are putting safeguards in place to protect against the damages of natural gas drilling, we are thinking of extending an open invitation to gas drillers to pollute our community and our downstream neighbors. Do not turn Auburn into the toxic wastewater site of New York State.
Good evening. Joe Leogrand, 161 East Genesee Street. I know we're all concerned about money, and from what I'm hearing, it's a $600,000 loss if you don't accept this gas drilling material. Maybe you can make it up by bringing in some businesses to make up $600,000, maybe 4 small businesses to do that. But I was reading the newspaper March 1st where the city was in violation for chronic acceptance of contaminated well drilling water. And the companies didn't even get a penalty. What I'm concerned about is the logistics or the sequence of events that happens. A company is allowed to deliver tanker trucks, large amounts, on the basis of a profile, from what I understand, of a company that has been doing business with the city. When they reach a certain threshold, they say, okay, now the city will accept your stuff. The problem is when the tankers arrive, somebody takes a small sample, I don't know, a gallon or whatever, and they send it off to a treatment, an analysis company. And when they do that, it takes 2 weeks to come back and say, remember that truck that came that had contaminated levels well exceeding the EPA limits? So this is what happened to 4 tanker trucks right here in Auburn. 4 tanker trucks came in and were delivered, dumped into the waste treatment plant, high levels of barium and high levels of iron from what it said in the paper. And I'm concerned about the sequence of events. It's like it's like the cart before the horse. You're checking this stuff after it's been put into the sewage treatment plant. I think it should be tagged, or the truck that's coming from wherever, Pennsylvania, or wherever it is, they have these locks you can put on these tanker trucks. Take a gallon out, have it checked, have it sent to a place where they evaluate it, and then say, okay, you got the green light, you can come and deliver this stuff. After it's checked. What you're doing now is checking it after the fact. So I think it's got to be changed. I'm going to leave this for you. I sent all the city councilors a JPEG of this, but I'm going to give it to Mr. Smith. So I hope you reevaluate the system. And a little pun on words, I think you have a crack in the system.
Thank you.
My name is Patty Beer. I live at 81 Swiss Street, Auburn, New York. I'm a member of Cuba Anti-Fracking Alliance. On Monday, the City of Niagara Falls approved an ordinance that prohibits the treatment or disposal of natural gas exploration and production waste. Niagara Falls suffered through one man-made disaster, Love Canal, and did not want to be part of man-made disaster number 2. One Niagara Falls councilman was quoted in The Citizen as saying, "I researched it, and it just came to a point where money can't be everything." That apparently is not the sentiment here in Auburn. Our group foiled the city last spring. It obtained information on the disposal, permitting, and testing of gas wastewater at our local wastewater treatment plant. This information was shared with council last year and again is available to anyone who would like to be informed. It is frustrating to have to continuously refute erroneous information in light of the documents that show the gas drilling companies did not follow permit requirements, nor were they adequately monitored by the city. But I will reiterate 2 points tonight for those who were not here last spring. First, the claim there have been no problems with any of the drilling wastewater disposed in the wastewater treatment plant. This statement should say there were no problems on the one day that was tested in 2010. Yes, the city did one test of effluent during the 15-month period we examined. That testing was done on March 11th, 2010. On March 11th, there were 14 disposals. During 2010, there were almost 3,000 disposals. Therefore, less than 0.5% of wastewater was tested. Even if every load of wastewater was exactly the same, which it isn't, this is woefully inadequate testing. It would be similar to testing one student in a district and basing the district's performance on that one test. The companies themselves neglected to submit required testing for 15 months in 2010 and 2011. When this testing was obtained in 2011, it was found the companies were not in compliance with the local pollutant limits. Because of this, the city issued a letter restricting delivery of wastewater on June 22, 2011. The ban was enacted in July 2011. From this, I would say the way to have no problems is simple. No monitoring, no testing, no problems. Second, the claim that the companies will be reluctant to reestablish ties with the city because of the negative attention. As a retired business person, I'm not aware of any business that operates against their own best interests. These companies were operating with little scrutiny until we began demanding answers last spring. I contend that they would be reluctant to return because they either cannot or will not comply with their permits. If that is the case, should we be doing business with them? I also promise to be unceasing in following up if this ban is lifted tonight. You didn't do your job before. We don't trust you.
Your time is up. I'm sorry.
Okay. Do I have 1 minute or no?
I'm sorry. You're out of time.
Okay.
Thank you.
My name is Sharon Michaels, and I live on 4411 Vinegar Hill Road. It's not in Auburn, it's just north of Auburn, halfway between Route 5 and 20. I know you'd rather be hearing from residents of Auburn, but the decision you make here tonight does not just affect your city. It affects all surrounding towns and villages. I have 2 articles I was going to read extras from, but I didn't know your time, so I'm not going to read one of them. This is from the Post-Standard in Syracuse, February 21st. It's called Wastewater Key Issue in Fracking Debate. Under a voluntary moratorium last May, Pennsylvania moved to stop municipal wastewater treatment plants from taking Marcellus waste because excessive salt concentrations were found downstream in rivers. The wastewater has more than 30 times as much salt as seawater. Treatment to remove the salt is energy intensive and should be considered as part of the environmental review. To accept wastewater treatment plants must pre-treat and analyze for chemical makeup and radioactivity. After it is treated, the effluent is usually discharged into rivers that also provide drinking water to communities downstream. The treatment requirements would rule out any of the plants now in existence in New York unless they invest in new equipment. I know that local municipalities are financially suffering at this time, and I do sympathize with that. All of us are. The city of Auburn will be offered a lot of money to dispose of frac fluid because, to my knowledge, 1, Pennsylvania treatment plants are not accepting it. 2, Ohio deep injection wells have stopped accepting it due to earthquakes. 3, few, if any, municipal treatment plants in New York will accept this waste. That will mean many, many truck trips from drilling sites to Auburn from south of here, because that's where it will begin, from New York or from Pennsylvania, probably Pennsylvania, if they're not accepting it, if fracking happens here. This is the impact that our surrounding neighbors will have. The trucks containing hazardous waste traveling up 81, 221, or any of the narrow, hilly, and curved roads along the Atisco, Skinny Atlas, Owasco, or any of the other Finger Lakes. One accident could harm these lakes and or properties along these routes. Even the New York DEC has no plan in place for where drilling waste will go. To cut down on drilling waste, the gas companies are now recycling their frac fluid. Therefore, whatever will be disposed of in any waste treatment plant will be highly concentrated solutions of salt, VOCs, heavy metals, and radioactivity. Most likely, this means the toxicity level of the materials now disposed of by the gas drillers is much more potent than what was brought to your treatment plant.
Yeah, I'm sorry, your time is up.
Sorry.
Thank you, though.
Any minute now, you can look out over your left shoulder, up there to the northeast, and blue lights will come on, reminding everybody that if you haven't already done so, by age 50, you go out and get a colonoscopy. Colon cancer kills you. And right now, you go to movie theaters, go take your grandchildren or your children to see the Lorax, and then explain to them in a language they can understand the ethics behind your decision to rescind this ban. I would ask you to maintain this ban on bringing the gas wastewater. I think it's a mistake to undo the work from this last summer. If you bring the same program on you had before, then you uncover the rational basis for why we banned bringing this stuff into our community. The rational basis for that was companies would not comply with, which are pretty good and rigorous permits that were drafted by our former city manager. Companies would or could not comply, and that was the rational basis, and it was your staff, gentlemen, that posted that in the newspaper. It wasn't me. Your staff complied with the law that the waste generators were in violation of the law. I think if you are going to continue to do this, you have to address the failures from before. You're going to need a full-time compliance officer to manage these permits and hold these companies to the type of responsibility that they have not been willing to undergo in the past. This idea that this revenue, which of course, as Guy Cosentino mentioned in his editorial today, that this revenue would appear magically, this magic number, is nonsense. We all know it. And the idea that the funding will come through and go directly to the wastewater treatment plant is probably also not true. Mr. Selby, I encourage you strongly to get staff input on this, even if you disagree with it. Don't silence it. Don't squelch it. That was our problem with our former city manager. He specifically told staff members who had criticisms about our CH Auburn project. They said, look, here are some failures and weaknesses in this contract. They were ordered to be silent. And now we're suffering, paying what, 50 grand, okay, to deal with the gas that we designed to receive from the landfill. Maybe that's better than just letting the gas escape, because methane is a terrible greenhouse gas. But look, this type of material, as bad as it is, this is Pop Warner. This isn't the big leagues. If we can't get this right, then we have some serious problems. Scientists across the world, there's no argument about the pharmaceuticals and the personal care products that are in the wastewater that the plants don't remove. DEC publications talk about this. There's chemicals that are in our clothes, and in our plastics, and in our lives, and in our bodies right now that are banned in other civilized Western countries. Most of us don't even know the name of these chemicals.
Thank you, Mr. Aikman. Your time is up, sir.
In closing, please table this. And
thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Shelby, my name is Gudrun Scott, and I live about 300 miles from here. It took me a lot of effort to get here. And I'm not the only one, because a lot of other meetings are going on in the state, and so they can't come here because they're talking about water being taken away from New York, drill cuttings being landfilled in New York, and now also wastewater being brought to New York. Even though we're not doing fracking, we're supposed to be providing the garbage here in New York. I did talk to your secretary, Ms. Boyce, and she assured me that you had never taken any hydrofracking material into your landfill here, or I mean into your into your sewer plant. And I see, though, I went to the New York Times. They had a regulation, are lax, gas wells tainted, water hits the rivers. And this was in February of 2011. And it says in here that in New York, another discharge was in Oswego Outlet near Auburn. Okay, so you have done some of this here. And you need to know that there's a big difference between the vertical and the horizontal, because the horizontal will go always snaking in the shale, and the shale is radioactive, as well as being with metals, heavy metals, and of course frac fluids. I just want to say, in terms of my own ability to speak about the matter, I used to be a chemistry high school teacher. I then went and became a nurse, and I've been an oncology nurse for most of my life. I'm here to speak for these people that I took care of for all these years. And I gave you copies. It's a 1-hour documentary from Houston, Texas. They had radioactivity. They didn't know what it was. Radioactivity in the drinking water, above the level that is acceptable by the EPA. So this is a 1-hour documentary which aired September 3rd, 2011 in Houston, Texas. After this was aired, the politicians all went into action and did something about it. So I wanted you all to have this. And I have 17 more copies for anybody else who wants this. And you can pass it around amongst your friends. And I want you to know, you can be on notice, that if you have radiation in the drinking water, then you have been notified about this. So it's not like nobody has told you. There's 42 wells.
Ma'am,
okay,
I'm sorry, your
that's
time.
all I can say.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. I don't want you to lose your time with someone applauding for someone else. So. Please, sir.
Hi, my name is David Warrow. I live on North Third Circle, and I wish to put my name on the ballot, so to speak, to lift the moratorium for disposing of the fluids at the wastewater treatment plant. I'm a citizen of Auburn, but I'm also an employee of a company that hauled probably the majority of the fluids into the wastewater treatment plant before the moratorium was put in place. We are hauling the majority of the fluids right now to Ohio, and I've been with the company for about 10 years now. And we've hauled into the wastewater treatment plant to my knowledge, without any incident. I think we can do this responsibly with signs. I think we can, like Mr. Leo Grant said, we could probably put some tanks there and you know, haul it in there, test it, and then once it's passed its test, I'm sure we can put it through the plant without any issues. I think you only have to travel maybe a few miles outside the city, and there's a large amount of gas wells in Cuba County, Seneca County also. It's been a big history in this area. These are all vertical wells. They've been around for a long time. Like I said, I'm talking as a city resident and also as an employee of the company that's going to be hauling in here. I can tell you right now that, yeah, a large amount of revenue, if you look at who's been paying the city, has been my company. Again, without, as far as my knowledge, without any incident. I'm not going to speak at other companies that are brought in there. I can tell you right now we are under an obligation by the PBC where the wastewater comes from, which wells, how much there was, and where it was disposed of. And we have to have that and audit yearly by the PBC. And presently, things are going well. Everything goes to Ohio right now. I think it'd be well advised to bring it here to Auburn like it's been for all those years. I think we should listen to the people that run the plant, and what are they saying? Listen to them. And I think they'll tell you the same thing. Things have been going well. Maybe we can do some adjustments. I agree. You know, but I think we can come to an agreement here that doesn't have to be nothing. I think we can do it responsibly. Okay? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Bill Foster. I live at 8 Bray Ridge Road in Auburn, New York, and I appeared before the council the first time we did this and thought I'd come around for a second go-around. Follow up on what my sister said, Patricia Beer, when she was up here. I think what she was going to say was that we would have every intention of foiling a number of times. I might make a suggestion to that. If you're going to do this, then perhaps what you should do is put an independent agency to check these trucks when they come in. I happened to talk with the mayor and the head of the sewage treatment plant during the first go-around, and that's when we found out that for 15 months there was absolutely no testing. There was no independent testing, no testing of any trucks that came, and you can get an independent, hopefully you would hire some independent agency to come in here and test. An independent agency, perhaps you'd like to put it right up on the public website what the test results are. And I would suspect if you do that, you know, none of this will pass just like it didn't pass before. But I think that people would have comfort in the fact that you're going to do it internally again is not something that I think is probably workable. You know, I go back to the old thing. I mean, it's disappointing now. I see towns surrounding us that are banning this practice. I think they've taken a hard look at what's happening here, and I think what you're doing is encouraging these companies to come in here and use us for really like a dumping ground. And I think you need to really think about that and what the image of this city you want it to be. And I think I certainly think that Niagara Falls should send a clear message to you. I mean, these are people that have dealt with that kind of problem before, and they certainly were offered, I think, a huge incentive for them for the state to come in and use their facilities to basically bring all the waste that no one else wants. I saw Councilman Smith wag his head when he thinks about earthquakes and injection wells. I surely hope you're not going to use this to start vertical wells for injection purposes in Cuba County, the biggest dumping ground in the world if you do something like that. And to say that there's no correlation between earthquakes and injection wells, you need to do your homework. It's Arkansas, it's Texas, it's Ohio, it's Colorado didn't do it because Colorado did a study when they injected water into deep wells, they had earthquakes. That's why they won't do it in Colorado. And it certainly is indicative of what's happening now. I mean, you've had the worst earthquake in Ohio's history in a long time. Arkansas had the worst earthquake in their history. So there's something. I'm sorry. I mean, I'm not the brightest bulb in the world, but there's certainly a correlation between what's been going on. So you ought to look very carefully at that. If you're at all thinking of putting injection wells in this place, I wouldn't understand why you would do it anyway, to put everyone else's toxic waste, you know, beneath the ground in this county. Just doesn't make sense. And you ought to think about what you're doing.
Thank you, Mr. Foster.
This is not an industry, it is an industry that is very privileged from federal environmental and regulatory exemptions, and it is a very powerful industry. And this flowback fluid, the waste that it produces, is very dangerous. There was a recent article put out by Michelle Bamberger, and I'll get the council a copy of it. She is a veterinarian down in Ithaca. She traveled the country, and her study showed animals that were exposed to drilling wastes. For instance, 17 cows drank from when a drilling pond liner leaked. They were dead within an hour. Those are cows. And I would like you to consider this. In the state of Pennsylvania, I'm a nurse, so this touches me deeply. There was a local law, there was a statewide law that was just passed, HB 1930, and this speaks to the deception and the dangerousness of this waste and the deception of the industry. Part of that law was, if I am a medical professional working in an emergency room, and one of the workers or a person is exposed to a drilling fluid or a drilling waste, I have to write for permission to get the constituents of that exposure before I can treat the person. And part of what I will have to go through is sign a non-disclosure agreement that I can never talk about that exposure to another medical professional. Those records will be sealed. Furthermore, it's not even accounted for that I asked for those exposures. And part of that law is, we all know that what goes down is a very small percentage of chemicals, mostly water and sand. By the process of fracking, it takes that water, when we fracture the bedrock, brings up volatile organic chemicals, heavy metals, salts, and radioactivity. Part of that law, HB 1930 in Pennsylvania, exempts the drillers from even having to account for what they call what occurs naturally during the process and what comes back up. If you don't think those drillers got those politicians to write that law for a reason, to bury what's in there so that we don't even know, and I as a medical professional can't even get that information now, what's in the flowback, and you guys are considering taking this in your stream. And if I want to be a NIMBY, my daughter lives in Oswego. So the last thing I want to say is I speak for a lot of people that don't even think shale gas extraction should happen as an extreme fossil fuel extraction. 80% of gas is used to heat and cool our homes. There's other sustainable green ways to do it, and there's measures all over the earth using those methods, conservation and alternative energies, and Auburn should get on the bandwagon with that. There are over 80 towns across the state that have found the political will to work on banning fracking. Your next door neighbor is one of them, and a lot of the towns in your county. And I speak for a lot of people when I say we don't want it in the state, and we don't want you to welcome it here.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Mr. Bush.
Dale Bush, 116 Standard Woods. I am here in the minority, as I am going to urge you to vote to rescind the ban on bringing in vertical well water. A lot of this I hear tonight and last year arose from all the negativity about horizontal hydraulic fracturing, which has nothing to do with what the city of Auburn takes in. We've taken this well water in anywhere from 10 to 15 years with no negative effects on our treatment plant, nor the Owasco River, nor the Seneca River. I have heard of no big fish kills because we're dumping this into the water. So I urge you to vote to rescind the ban, and anything that is being said here that pertains to horizontal fracking, that you just disregard it all because it has nothing to do with what's going on here. My second thing is on the alternate side parking, and I would like to say that I hope that you make it year-round, that we need it. I can understand those with businesses, but we need the room to get these heavy vehicles through there in case of emergencies. My last item, which really doesn't pertain for the city council to have any vote on, but is the case matching. I hope that the city council could have some influence on those that will decide whether the case matching can go ahead with converting it to homeless vets and children programs. I think it's needed here in the city. I don't see it being a negative to the surrounding neighborhoods. As a Vietnam vet, with the negative reception that we received when we returned home, I just hope that we can take care of the veterans now that have fallen on hard times because of varied problems. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bush.
Heard about this from Mary, we were so disheartened and somewhat incredulous.
Doctor, could you pull that microphone just a little bit closer, please? They're having trouble hearing you.
We have worked over the past year so hard to keep fracking out of our state. You can't hear us.
That mic doesn't work. Can you restart?
Doctor, could you go over here, please? We'll let you start right from the very beginning. Take your time. We're not that mean here. We'll work.
Okay. You got my name and address.
Yes.
Okay. So I'm here to speak, I believe, for the medical community and also my husband. We've worked so hard over the past year to try to keep hydrofracking out of New York State, and we're so close, and I really think we're winning. I don't think hydrofracking is coming here. And it's so ironic that now we are considering taking this. It's not debatable. It is laden with radioactivity and heavy metals, arsenic, barium, cancer-causing agents. There's no doubt about that. Sandra Steingraber says in her book, this is ultimately, hydrofracking is ultimately a parenting crisis. How do we protect our children and future generations? Our children are the ones playing by the streams. They're the ones who are concentrating in their blood everything that they eat from this water that we will be spreading on fields. By the very nature of this, the longer the time exposure, the more risk they are at. I just urge you to look past the monetary implications of this decision and think of our future generations. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name's Jillian Raymond. I live at 53 Grant Street here in Auburn. I know you were told to disregard any notion of any talk of hydrofracking because it does not pertain to Auburn, and I'm just going to start quickly with just this, that Vicki Murphy has continually maintained that wastewater comes from vertically drilled wells and not horizontally fracked wells. By Talisman's own documentation that we have foiled, the wastewater mainly came from horizontal or directional wells. When we cross-referenced 2010 discharge records with DEC's wells database, we discovered that almost all the wells were horizontal or directional. So yes, it does apply to Auburn. That being said, I won't mention the word fracking or hydraulic anymore. I submit to the council a model to go after. This is not what's been in the news the past week with Buffalo. This was last year with Buffalo. This is their ordinance amendment against natural gas extraction prohibition and the disposal of all hazardous waste. Natural gas. Not one word of fracking, hydraulic, horizontal, anything. And one of the things I would really like the council to look at, where it says, whereas after review of scientific research from both opponents of natural gas extractions and natural gas extraction industry advocates. Sorry. That means that people like us were on the agenda and got on the floor and actually had to have a dialogue with the council offering our scientific information. We didn't get that last time around, and we still got a ban. And when you did bring in your scientific experts from the oil and gas industry, your geologist flat out said, I know my employers would not want me to say it, but I would not want this where I live. So please, this passed bipartisan. Everybody showed up to the vote, 9-0 in favor of a ban. If nothing else, I mean, I would love for you to just withhold the ban. Do this right. They researched it. They didn't speed it along 6 days after moving the date. They talked about it. They invited people to the floor. I am asking for people like us to be put on the agenda and for a vote on the ban to be held until then. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Richard Miller, and I live at Meadowbrook Drive in Auburn. This is going to be my only opportunity maybe to speak to the resolution, so I've given you several documents. The first is a congressional report on hydrofracking chemicals, which is based on testimony from the gas companies themselves. The second is a New York Assembly hearing report on public health impacts of hydrofracking. The third item is a news article from this morning's Citizen, and that doesn't require any explanation. And before you discount this material out of hand because we presumably won't be involved in any phase of horizontal drilling, let me point out, as has been pointed out a number of times tonight, neither of these reports or numerous other sources make any distinction between horizontal and vertical wastewater in terms of chemical content. I repeat, there is no difference in content, only volume. The key issue is and always has been that our plant simply cannot treat this stuff. To me, treatment means we either remove or alter the structure of the toxins to render harmless. We can do neither. We dilute and flush into the river. This stuff is then in the environment permanently, where even in trace amounts, they accumulate over time with environmental and biological impacts we don't understand and may not realize for at least a generation, probably longer. Consider for just a moment what we've already experienced in recent years, with increasingly complex environmentally linked public health issues, endangered food sources, polluted waterways where we can no longer eat the fish or drink the water, soils that no longer support agriculture except with the infusion of synthetic chemical fertilizers. In every case, the environmental toxicity has been an invisible, gradually building threat. These conditions didn't occur over a few years. They came as a result of decades of approved, commonly accepted practices of the times, only to discover too late that we have poisoned our food, our water sources, and the air we breathe. You need to remember that places like Love Canal and Onondaga Lake occurred in just this manner. By now, with our entire planetary ecosystem at risk, we certainly should know better. And we know what this waste contains. And let me add on a local note that the presence of wildlife in and around the Wasco River is certainly not indicative of a healthy environment. Like us, wildlife has no choice but to consume whatever is available, toxic or not. When you read this material, I believe you cannot avoid the realization.
Your time is up.
Okay.